Hi everyone and welcome back to Newegg TV. My name is Paul. Today we're going to be doing an unboxing and overview of this fantastic new motherboard from ASUS. This is the Maximus V Extreme. It is the highest end motherboard available on the Z77 chipset from the ROG line of gaming enthusiast motherboards from ASUS, and they've really thrown the kitchen sink at this one. So I'm actually going to start off by testing a brand new feature of this board. It's still in alpha stage, so we're not sure if it's going to make release, but the ROG Connect button here, I've heard, can immediately connect you to an ASUS technical support person. So I'm just going to push this button right there, and we will see if it works.
You rang, Paul?
JJ.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I heard you needed some assistance here on this Maximus V Extreme.
That is amazing technology, and you got here really fast.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a closer look at this board.
Let's do.
So as long as you're here, JJ, let's talk a little bit about design philosophy, because that's a big part of what you guys do at ASUS, and there's always been a lot of appreciation from our viewers for really the thought that goes into the design of the boards. And I have to say that we've already done the Maximus V formula,
correct,
which is just a step below this one, according to the segmentation. And there's a couple questions that jump out right out of the gate, and I just wanted to clarify those for those out there who might have these questions themselves. The two things I think missing from the Maximus V Extreme that we found in the formula is going to be the combo cooler that you guys had for the VRMs, which combined air cooling and a water cooling loop, and then also the Supreme Effects audio. And there's a reason why those exist there but not on this board. And why is that?
Well, it really comes down to segmentation like you talked about. You know, when we go about designing the motherboards, we spend a real large amount of time really kind of being active in the community about asking questions. And what these questions really come down to is, you know, how does a user look at building their system, right? And when we're talking about building a system, it's from a top to bottom perspective. Are they carrying over previous components from their older build? Are they buying something entirely new? And at different price bands, different users make different considerations. Take, for instance, like if you were to buy maybe like a $150 to $170 motherboard, you might have actually a higher likelihood to be carrying over some legacy hardware. If you're buying generally at a higher cost board, you're probably buying more newer components to go with that system, or looking for maybe a tighter level of integration for features so that you don't have to buy as much. The formula has really been targeted at being kind of the ultimate gaming motherboard. Now, while the Extreme and collectively all the ROG motherboards are all about gaming at its core, while also supporting kind of the PC enthusiast, and enthusiast I use loosely. You could be an enthusiast in terms of just having an awesome system with a high level of performance. You could be an overclocker. You could be an overclocker and gamer and enthusiast. You could be doing editing on it. You could be doing web browsing. It's loose. It's just somebody that's passionate, kind of really wanting the best of the best when it comes to the quality of the hardware, to the design implementation, to the software, to the UEFI, and all those aspects. Extreme, though, kind of sets apart in terms of really being focused at users that want control, and they want a high degree of the control in being able to tune and tweak their system. With Formula, we still definitely give you that huge degree of control and flexibility within the software and within the UEFI, but we're looking for a tight level of integration to really achieve a higher level of experience when it comes to gaming. So that first definitely came within our focus at doing the Supreme Effects audio implementation, and then from there also the Fusion thermal cooling solution. Now that solution, when we implemented it on there though, was taken from the context that we knew that most users, you know, 90% plus are going to be using air cooling configurations. And a smaller set of enthusiasts, whether it's because they're also overclockers or just really passionate about having the highest level of performance, would want an easy option at maybe integrating water cooling. It's probably their first time that they've gone about water cooling, and they didn't want to have to really consciously think about which blocks should I buy, you know, is it going to be compatible, is it going to work, should I worry about, you know, inlets and outlets, how to get this all situated, right? So we just wanted to be able to give you better performance, but really easily implemented. With Extreme, you're going to find that a lot of Extreme users, and we've had tight relationships with tons of different vendors like Coolix, for example. Coolix has always made tons of different integrated water block designs for our motherboards. And with the focus that those enthusiasts, while we have a really high quality Vrm Heatsink design, they want better than that. And they're also knowledgeable. They've probably built water cooling systems on multiple occasions. So they don't want to necessarily pay that expense for a water cooling solution that will ultimately be inferior to what the performance would be of a full quality aftermarket solution. as well as allowing them to really install the specific aesthetic and the performance that they're going to want from that component. And that also relates to the sound card equation as well. They might be considering, going with like a Zonar DX, or they might already have one. Maybe they have a Zonar STX. Maybe they're going to be buying a Zonar Phoebus. So they're already going for a high performance audio solution. So once again, while we were trying to give you an outstanding discrete class audio solution on the formula, it's a question that user wants that already right off the bat and doesn't necessarily already have a pre-existing kind of high-end, or they want to go even higher end.
So maybe you've got your own Vrm heatsinks that you want to integrate here, and of course you still have that option on here. All of the heatsinks are mounted with Phillips head screws, so they can be removed. They can be added on for those enthusiasts who want those. Same with the audio. The audio card that a really extreme enthusiast might be using is probably going to be higher end than anything that could be integrated on a motherboard in the first place.
That's correct. I mean, we did do a really outstanding job on Supreme FX 4. It's really a high-class quality solution, but can it compete with what we're going to do on a Zonar STX, or compete what we're doing with the Zonar Phoebus? No. So as such, it would be redundant for the user to pay that. So what we're going to focus in on and then is going to be improving, let's say, the Vrm heatsink. So the Vrm heatsink actually is going to perform better than the passive normal heatsink that's on the formula. So while the formula has more flexibility to go into water, in terms of its overall dissipative performance characteristics, it's better at passive cooling than the formula will be. So in that degree, you are getting an upgrade. And of course, then there's going to be other technologies that we're going to focus in on that the user can't easily integrate, such as the expansion support for more GPUs through the Gen 3 PLX implementation, through the Vga Hot Wire technology, through the integration of Thunderbolt, and other add-ins that make it very difficult for the user to say that short of buying a different motherboard, I can't get that feature, right?
So you have a lot of higher-end, both tweaking, tuning, as well as monitoring implementations. So if you are going to be doing extreme exotic cooling, so LN2 stuff, you've got the sub-zero temperature readers down here. A lot of that stuff, as well as all of the support for multiple video card solutions, as well as support for folks who probably maybe doing builds outside of the box. They're working at an open workstation somewhere, so you have stuff like the Pci Express switches right there to turn the Pci Express lanes on and off for easier testing, less wear and tear on the board, swapping video cards out, and overall looking at not just the high-end enthusiast, but actually the extreme enthusiast who's really getting into that the stuff that the likes of myself probably mostly just dreams about or watches videos about. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, we try to serve multiple demographics with every single board because we're conscious of the fact you're going to get some users that buy ROG boards, even extreme boards, and they'll run them stock. They'll buy it maybe for the pure ambition of wanting the best of the best. They want that best component quality. Maybe they want really outstanding UEFI builds, which the ROG team is always committed to bringing on the boards.
Or the red and black just really matches.
Or they just want an awesome looking board in terms of the aesthetic. So we know that there's a lot of cross coverage in terms of the board usage, but Extreme is really kind of focused that for the users that are looking for the most expansive connectivity, usually with a higher focus at more multiple GPUs and more specialized technologies that are about kind of tweaking and tuning, regardless of the environment. Like you said, whether it's in a chassis, whether it's on a test bed, whether it's like in a bench professional environment, whether you guys are having competing against each other in forums, it's going to fit in any single one of those scenarios.
It's always great to get that perspective from the manufacturer where you guys come at in terms of designing the board, because you have a lot of boards out there and they're really designed to fit the needs of the specific users. But that said, let's take a closer look at the board itself. Here's a look at the whole board, of course, keeping with the black and red color scheme, as is the entire ROG line. And JJ, would you indulge us with pointing out the fan headers on the board?
Sure. We've got a huge amount of connectivity on here, actually a total of 8. So here you can see that we have at the top 2 fan headers. That's the CPU and CPU optional. So that's great location there, especially for push-pull fan configurations. These do support full control in terms of manual fan operation as well as presets, whether it's in the UEFI or in the software. If you continue to move over here, we can see another header in terms of additional chassis fan header. If you can go ahead and point out some of the other guys that you might see as you flow down on that side of the board.
One more here just to the right of the DIMMs, as you can see. Also got a little temperature header. There's a little 2-pin guy right there, right below it. And there's a few of these next to some of the fan headers on the board.
Correct, a total of 3 on there. So like you said, that allows you to just go ahead and register additional temperatures for whatever device you want to go ahead and affix that probe to, or if you want to have it just hanging free there for ambient, then you can do that as well.
So all labeled, of course, so you can match up the temperature readouts. with the BIOS or software. And then we got another fan header down there at the bottom, 4-pin right next to the USB 3.0. Another fan header in the bottom middle. I can lift the board up just a little bit so you guys can see that one. Next to the USB.
Exactly, and then from there we'll go ahead and we'll move up, and we see that we've got then another two headers right over in this section.
There's also a white fan header right there. Is there a difference to that one?
Actually, that one's not a fan header. That's for an optional power connection.
Oh, mysterious. Okay, extra. Now you guys know. See, that's why JJ's here.
Yeah, always check out the manual. Always gives you all those good nuggets of data. Yeah.
All right.
You know, last note that we, of course, is that this board supports our Fan Expert 2 technology as well. So all the additional chassis fan headers, not only outside of 4-pin support, do support also 3-pin control operation. So especially for some of the chassis that are utilizing maybe older 3-pin fan configurations, you're still going to have the ability to go ahead and tweak and tune those. And I think that we did a pretty cool video in the past on Fan Expert 2 if users want to see a little bit more information on how that works.
And Fan Expert 2 does work with 3-pin or 4-pin?
That's correct. 3-pin or 4-pin, with only the 3-pin being restricted to not being present on the CPU fan headers, which is not really too much of an issue. Most of the current generation CPU coolers on the market are 4-pin for the CPU.
Pretty much everyone I've seen that carries any weight, of course.
So I think let's maybe take a look at the VRM assembly.
All right, we're starting in the upper left-hand side of the board. I'm noticing you have 2 supplemental CPU power connectors, an 8-pin and a 4-pin.
That's correct, and realistically it's not required for normal usage at all, and even by normal, if you're heavily overclocking the motherboard, if you're running multi-GPU configurations, you don't need to worry about having the supplemental power there. That's really only going to be in extreme situations where there's going to be a big change in the ambient temperature, which can sometimes change operational efficiency for voltage output, as well as just overall power output. If you want to be kind of better safe than sorry, then of course you can connect it there and it won't cause any issues, but it's not something that you have to have connected there to ensure the best overall stability, even when overclocking.
So don't worry about a power supply upgrade if your power supply only has the 8-pin, for example.
Yeah, totally not an issue, and that ties in, of course, to the quality power delivery. You know, here you can see that we have a really robust high-performance heat pipe VRM heatsink. It's covering our high-performance digital VRM. So as you know, we've been using a digital design now for multiple generations. Kind of ROG has set the bar in this regard, and we continue to have a really high performance VRM design here for the CPU, for the iGPU, for the DRAM, and for the collective VRM. That's all digitally controlled. It's configurable within the UEFI as well as in with the software. You can tweak it, you can tune it, you can modify it, adjust things like the OCP, so the current protection mechanisms, the load line calibration options, the phase management, all that is tweakable, it's tunable, but it's definitely set for a high degree of performance, high degree of power output, and really outstanding efficiency. And of course that's mirrored by just the quality componentry that we're using here. You can see that we've got these really high performance, large alloy-based chokes, where really it's not the quote-unquote number of the phases that you're using on the board, it's the quality of those phases that you're using. You might remember for the Ivy Bridge launch, our actual Gene board set over 7 gigahertz using actually the same phase array design. So it really just comes down to, like I said, the collective components that are being used on here. I know that you have a personal affinity for the Nichicon GT caps.
I do, of course.
Those are awesome. They're black, but these are significantly rated at a much higher temperature level in terms of their total lifespan as well as their power output. But you know, it's those nice little touches on a ROG, especially when you're considering that this board is going to probably be used in an overclock configuration as well as in multi-GPU environments, where it being rated at a much higher temperature tolerance also is helping to improve the overall lifespan of the board.
Now, as far as the componentry in the board being rated for high temperatures, is there also some thought that goes into them being rated for low temperatures?
Almost definitively. The actual Nichicon GT caps we rate as low as -70°C and actually upwards of 125°C. So really an extreme level in terms of the actual temperature tolerance, and that's outside of the actual 55°C ambient oven temperature test that the board gets put into in itself. So we really do a huge amount of testing to validate not only the collective components, but the board with those components. You know, there's some vendors out there that sometimes just talk about what the components are rated for, and that's all well and good, but it's very important take into consideration the actual board as it's brought together with all those components and how it's performed. Because it's very easy to like saying, hey, if I put this awesome quality Brembo brakes, you know, and I put this awesome, you know, aftermarket muffler, but I'm putting it on, you know, this junkyard, automobile that I'm pulling out that doesn't even run, right? Just because you put on good quality components onto something doesn't necessarily make it better than what it is. So it's kind of collectively thinking about the whole design approach.
All right, and of course that VRM assembly surrounds the 1155 socket, which will support 2nd gen Sandy Bridge or 3rd generation Ivy Bridge core processors from Intel. I would recommend, I imagine you as well would recommend going with Ivy Bridge versus Sandy Bridge, just given that you do get PCI Express Gen 3 support.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you guys, of course, usually have great deals on it anyway, so Ivy Bridge is definitely the way to go, especially if you're running this Extreme board. And that kind of segues into memory. Ivy Bridge is also going to give you outstanding memory controller performance. We've got some awesome, just beautiful, high-performance, brand-new Corsair Dominator Platinum 2666 4 gig modules. So these are just bleeding edge modules, the best that you can get in terms of overall performance, hand-picked in terms for best stability, overclockability, plus they've got an integrated LED that can be tuned out so that you can get the custom aesthetic that you're looking for. But you know, Ivy Bridge is going to be able to give you the ability to be able to run DIMMs like this, whether you're talking about like the 2400 kit or the 2666 kit that we're utilizing here, as well as this board continues to feature our T-topology memory design that we detailed in our original Z77 boards, where we have a special customized trace layout, as well as our UEFI, which is custom tuned to give you the best memory overclocking, as well as extensive DRAM tuning options. So you can really get into the nitty and gritty for users that kind of want to maximize efficiency and performance. They can go in there and tune all those parameters. And
currently 8 gig DIMMs supported, so you do want to run at least 2 DIMMs so you can make use of the dual channel mode, and 32 gigs maximum total supported. Have you ever heard
We actually have validated new 16 gigabyte DIMMs on the market already.
I was just about to ask you that. So validated? Can we confirm this right now?
They actually have been validated and turning on our lab on our Z77s with the latest generation UEFIs. They're a little bit expensive and they're still new to the market, but we have already done validation for 16 gigabyte DIMMs.
That is the same story we were talking about a year ago when we were talking about 8 gig DIMMs though. So hopefully the density will continue to increase. We'll see 16 gig DIMMs on the market lately, and of course everyone watching right now is, what can you do with that much
all
memory?
the way, man.
RAM disks. Perfect. So yeah, now we've heard it from JJ. 16 gig DIMM supported, and let's move on to this area over here, which has a lot of high-end stuff. So you got some actually voltage measurement points right there, as well as a debug LED.
Mm-hmm. And then right below that debug LED, we've also got our slow mode switch. This is a specialized switch that's designed for, I'd say, easier posting process for users that are looking at high-level overclocks in a bench environment under extreme types of cooling, whether it's like dry ice, you could be looking at liquid nitrogen, liquid helium, cascade, phase change, kind of those type of situations. For the normal user, just leave it in the off mode and don't worry about it. It's just an option there for the extreme enthusiasts. Another option that's going to kind of tie into the voltage read points that we have here in terms of the probe-it connectivity is going to be Vga Hot Wire, which you can see there's one connection right up here for Vga Hot Wire. So this is a cool feature that we introduced on the Rampage 4 Extreme series of motherboards that will work with any graphics cards, but are specially designed to work ideally with, of course, ASUS graphics cards like our GTX 680 or 7970 DC2, or even our upcoming 7970 Matrix. It allows you to make a direct connection between the motherboard and the graphics card so that you have more extensive controls for the core voltage, for the memory voltage, and for the PLL voltage. And you can actually go ahead and increase those to higher levels, whether you're doing it within our OC key interface, which is our external module, within the UEFI, or of course within the Turbo V Evo suite, which is part of AI Suite 2. So pretty cool, especially for those guys that are looking to push their graphics cards to the highest levels of performance.
And you're saying the new 7970 Matrix actually is going to have plugs, so you won't even have to do any soldering, you can just connect it directly to the board.
That's correct. Right now, if you were to utilize any graphics card, you kind of got to do a little bit of research, maybe go into the ROG forums, find out maybe where those voltage points are on the card and do the soldering work yourself. If you have the 680 or the 7970 card, we've already mapped it out for you, but you still have to make that solder point. For the, like you said though, the upcoming Matrix card, it will just be a direct cable that you'll plug into the card and then directly into the motherboard.
Awesome.
Pretty cool. Moving down, we've got the PCIe switches that we have on there. That's great for diagnostic purposes as well as for benching purposes. Sometimes you want to have all the graphics cards set up and you want to be able to dynamically switch through them, but not have them essentially producing any heat, but already prepped for setup. But from a diagnostic standpoint, maybe you've got multiple GPUs, maybe you've got an add and RAID controller card, network card, sound card, different things. Maybe your system has an issue posting. You don't have to go through and remove these cards to find out which one is maybe stopping your system from posting correctly. Just go ahead and disable that, and then from there see if everything's working correctly.
Very handy.
Yep. Moving from there, we got a little red button. That's a cool little button in terms of the memo key as well as the go button. So you know we've had the go button there for a long time as well as the memo key. So memo key is just kind of one-stop shop. Just press the button to help to initialize and bypass memory initialization issues. Maybe you know you have mix and match DIMMs, things along those lines. You want to be able to go ahead and get the system to post. You could do that. Or when you use it in the go button mechanism, it will store a overclock profile that you can define in the UEFI, so that when you press that button, it will auto-initialize that overclocked profile.
Fantastic.
So moving down from here, we can see, of course, that we've got our front USB 3 header in a great location. The cool thing, of course, is the front USB 3 header does work with our USB 3 boost technology, so it can go ahead and provide you significantly faster performance for either the AS Media add-in controllers or for the Intel controllers. Either one, it does not matter, and that's all accessible, of course, from within our AI Suite 2 software interface. And with Windows 8 coming up and having official support for UASP, that's even a bigger plus point in terms of being able to have that implementation.
And is this particular header routed through you're controlled by the Z77 chipset?
Yes, generally as mandated by Intel, usually always this front header should usually always be an Intel USB 3 connection point. And then we'll be noting as we get a little bit lower on the board, we have a secondary front USB 3 header, which is powered by the add-in controller.
Okay.
So moving down from there, we've of course got right angle serial ATA connectivity.
I can flip this up for us.
A whole lot of storage right there in terms of what we have going on. Now, one thing that's a little bit different that we do on the RG boards is, of course, we focus in on performance and high performance storage connectivity. So the Intel PCH only gives you 2 SATA 6G ports. So we've replaced that with all SATA 6G ports for those in the red. So you have a total of 6 SATA 6G ports. 2, of course, from the Intel PCH, and then 4 being from 2 separate AS Media 1061 SATA controllers, which have better performance than, let's say, your standard Marvell 9128 controller. And then we still maintain 2 3G ports, which are provided by the Intel PCH. So we still then have 2 additional 3G PCH ports. One of them will link into the M-Combo module that we'll talk a little bit about, and then we have a secondary SATA port that's on the bottom location of the board that would ideally be used for eSATA connectivity with the breakout cable that we provide in the box. Now, down here at the bottom, you can see that we have something that kind of looks like a SATA port, but it's not. This actual block is our Sub-Zero Sense technology, and this is essentially it's like having an integrated K-probe support. So the user can essentially just get the K-probes, plug them in there, and have advanced temperature management. So normally to have this high degree and low temperature supported type of monitoring, you'd have to have a high performance meter that could be costing you a couple $100 if you're kind of an enthusiast that's going into that level of temperature detection that's required. But here it's integrated into the board. All you have to do is just buy the probes, plug them in, run them to whatever device you want or location you want, and you're good to go.
Fantastic. You just set the board back up straight here. We can start talking about the front panel I/O and inputs and outputs at the bottom.
Yeah. So we can see right there by your fingers, we've got, of course, a BIOS switch that allows us to switch between the 2 independent ROMs that are on the motherboard, and those are fully independent. One thing I will make a note is that we've already released full Windows 8 UEFIs for our entire series of Z77 motherboards, including this Maximus board. This is going to give us significantly faster post times, where in most situations we're seeing with a modern generation SSD a full post time. In Windows 7, Windows 8 will actually even be a little bit faster, but in Windows 7 between about 9 to about 11 seconds.
That's fast.
So it's very quick, and we even have fully adjustable special post profiles where users can initialize or de-initialize certain add-in controllers to allow the system to post more quickly. Plus, you get the benefit of having a more secure UEFI because it meets the security requirements for Windows 8. So definitely you want to make sure that if you get this board or any one of our Z77 RG boards or any Z77 board, make sure to get that latest UEFI.
I will be updating mine tonight.
Moving from there, of course, we've got the secondary front USB 3 header there, 2 more USB 2 front headers, and then we've got, of course, that chassis fan header, and then right here you can see that we've got that eSATA connection.
There it is.
And that's that additional USB header that we, excuse me, that 3G PCH header that we talked about before. And then moving past that, we get over here to where we see our soothing capacitors and we see our front HD audio connection. And that, of course, is for the integrated Realtek codec controller that's on the board, so that you can go ahead and connect to your chassis and you'll be good to go there. Now, moving up from here, we can see that we've got some additional connectivity in terms of power requirements for the Pcie Expansion. So one of them is going to be optional. It's not required for 3-way or for 4-way configurations, but same thing like with that additional CPU power connection. If you wanted to go ahead and have more power available to you under complex multi-GPU configurations, have the best stability, it is an option that's available to you.
And that's just a 6-pin PCI Express power connector?
That's correct, yep. Now, moving up from there, you're going to see also there's a connector for the OC key. I think you've got the OC key over there,
I do
Paul?
have the OC key. It happens to be right there. So this is simply a USB header, and I was asking JJ, is this specifically designed for OC key, or is this simply USB header? And it is a USB header, but it's just positioned right there.
Yeah, it's positioned there specifically for the OC key. And what that actual device does is it attaches directly to the back of your graphics card. And once you connect it directly to the back of your graphics card, it gives you a full, actually on-screen display that gives you full low-level access to the hardware, independent of the operating system or any application you're running. So at the click of a button on your keyboard, you can have the OC key turned on, and you can see all your temperatures, you can see your clock speeds, your fan speeds, your voltages, and even if you wanted to then dynamically change them, so you wanted to overclock the system, modify it, add more voltage, make an adjustment to the multiplier, that's all fully available to you real-time on the keyboard, and you can dynamically turn it off and on. No system resources are utilized, and you can also take advantage of some cool information. ROG Connect, which we've shown in the past, which is a really cool way to monitor and diagnose your system. Say, take for instance that maybe you get some debug code, right, that comes up on side the actual debug code that's on the motherboard. The problem is once it's inside of the chassis, you can't see the debug code, right? So if I get maybe a certain error on here, I don't know what that error means unless I'm willing to take out the manual and look through it. So you could always take ROG Connect, connect that cable to the white port that's here on the back I/O, connect that to, let's say, a notebook, and be able to look at the ROG Connect software and see what that debug code says. But with the OC key implementation, all I have to do is just have that connected, hit the hotkey, and even if my system isn't actually on, I will get that on-screen display that comes on, and the moment I turn on the system, I can see a full real-time postcode display to me, broken down instead of code format, in string format, so that I know what's going on with my system.
So great for debugging as well as for monitoring when you're doing
pretty much debugging, monitoring, overclocking, you know, really hitting home on terms of that tweaking and tuning aspect in terms of what the Maximus board enables. So it's a really awesome piece of tech that we have there.
Fantastic.
Moving up here, just to the top last portion that we have before we start maybe looking at some of the I/O connectivity is going to be this really cool M combo card. So maybe you want to show that off there, Paul?
Sure.
So this is a cool little mechanism that we have that allows us to have the flexibility of course, having the integrated 802.11n dual band and Bluetooth module on board, because the motherboard does come with that wireless connectivity as well as Bluetooth. But on the other side, you then have, of course, mSATA support, so that you can go ahead and drop in an mSATA SSD. Here we have a Run Core 120 gigabyte drive, which would actually be more than enough for an operating system if you wanted to, and you're good to go. Or of course, you could utilize it for the SSD caching that's natively supported by the Z77 chipset. So it's a very nice, easy, accessible implementation that you just got to go ahead and plug into that top portion of the board, and you're good to go.
Fantastic implementation, and it lets you do fancy things like running your whole operating system with nothing plugged into your SATA ports.
Yes.
Which JJ did last time he stopped by, and I thought it was some sort of wizardry. I was like, how are you running your operating system?
So lastly, I think before we get there to the I/O course, I know an area that you're always interested in is in the Pcie Expansion.
Definitely, and that is one place where you guys put a lot of effort in to make sure that you can get very fast performance, but also have a lot of expansion available.
Most definitively. When you're talking about, you know, an extreme board, not everybody's actually buying this board for 3-way or 4-way support. Sometimes people are buying it just for the high degree of expansion that's available, as well as the kind of the configuration parameters that you have available to you. So you could, of course, run 2 triple slot cards and still have spacing in between those cards, or still room for an expansion card, whether it's like a sound card, a higher performance network card, maybe a RAID card, or users that are considering dual slot cards, you know, you still also have additional expansion. But as you noted, we've gone ahead and done a little bit of different configuration. Some vendors might go ahead and add this PLX Gen 3 multiplexing chip on here to go ahead and, of course, give you 3-way and 4-way. But even for something like 2-way, they're going to map everything through that switch. That actually can introduce additional latency and can slightly bring down the performance as opposed to running in that native kind of uninhibited Gen 3 operation mode if you're just running directly from the CPU. So in our setup, we're essentially only accessing that PLX chip when running in 3-way or 4-way configurations. So if you're running one single GPU or you're running an SLI or Crossfire, then it's going to run natively from the lanes that are provided from the CPU, giving us the lowest latency and the best performance.
So just to clarify, when you are running through the PLX chip, it's a very slight ding as far as latency goes. It's only going to be maybe a percentage point or two as far as performance goes if you're comparing direct benchmarks to one another. Yeah,
in our internal analysis, we actually found that, of course, it varies a little bit from game title to game title and depending on other factors like the actual amount of bandwidth that's being utilized. But in some games, we found the difference being up to about 10 frames. With the latency is a little bit harder to dictate and kind of know what's going on because sometimes it comes more in the response of the game engine in itself. So you might maybe feel a slight latency and maybe a micro stutter point. It can be very difficult to kind of know exactly how it influences it. Overall, for most users, they're probably never going to see the impact from it, but it's just kind of that attention and detail that we bring to try to make sure that we're giving you the best performance possible at how you utilize the system. But this is also where there's one key difference take from consideration that if you didn't want that latency introduction and you wanted to have 3-way or 4-way expansion, that's where X79 shines, of course, because you have more PCI lanes. So considering a board like the Rampage 4 Formula or the Rampage 4 Extreme or some of other 4-way solutions as well would give you that flexibility without having to utilize a PLX chip.
So here with an Ivy Bridge CPU installed, you get 16 lanes PCI Express connectivity. And essentially, if you were going to want the fastest video card connection, and as you've said, the majority of people are going to be going with either a single card, maybe 2 cards, or maybe quad SLI or quad Crossfire.
Correct.
And in that case, you'll be using this top 16X and then the black 16X right here, and those are both natively
by 8 Gen 3.
By 8. I'm sorry, physically 16X, and those will run at X8 on Gen 3 and connect to the Ivy Bridge processor.
That's correct. You got it, boss. And the last note to also keep in mind is that the PLX in itself is also giving us the great ability to have sustained concurrent connections. This is really important because some users don't realize that if you want to be able to take advantage of a huge number of add-in controllers like USB 3, more SATA 6G ports, Wi-Fi integration, Thunderbolt with this motherboard features, and having all of those work simultaneously at the same time with even, let's say, SLI configurations, you can eventually run out of PCI lanes. So with this type of motherboard, just like we did on the Formula, while the Formula didn't feature a Gen 3 PLX, it featured a Gen 2. That's also kind of one of the key differentiation points between a higher-end board and a lower-end board, is that ability to have more concurrent controllers all active at one time, especially if you're utilizing all of them at one time and wanting to ensure that you get the best performance from all of them.
And when you take a first look at this board, you might think, oh, well, that board's designed for 3-way SLI Crossfire, 4-way SLI Crossfire, but do you find that actually a lot of users will buy this board for the bandwidth, maybe be running a single or 2-card configuration, but then you have the option to drop in a RAID controller card, some other, bandwidth hungry.
Oh, sure. It could even be a physics card as well. If you're doing, like, say, like a 2, GTX 680 cards, right? And then maybe you want to go with like a 660 Ti card. So you have a lot of different options when you just have this level of expansion. And with expansion, let's maybe take a look at the back I/O.
All right.
So we've got definitely a huge amount going on here. Right off from the top, you can see that we have a Thunderbolt connection, which will actually also serve as a mini DP output. So this gives it in concert with an Ivy Bridge CPU some pretty cool functionality, and that you can support 3 panels all active at one time. So that's not normally supported on a motherboard that doesn't have the Thunderbolt natively implemented on it. So that's a cool degree of functionality that you have there. Now, in addition, you can see that we've got 2 buttons here. One is going to be the RG Connect button, which would work with this white USB port, which of course gives us that external connectivity to a USB-enabled PC so that we can go ahead and remotely diagnose, monitor, overclock, troubleshoot the system, do a lot of really cool things with it. We've got a clear CMOS here, course, here at the top, we've got that M combo card that we talked about. Now, in terms of USB connectivity, you can see that we've got 4 USB 2 ports. That USB port here, in terms of white, when it's not in the RG Connect mode, serves as a standard USB port. Now, this will also work in terms of being the USB BIOS flashback port.
One of my favorite features that you guys have ever implemented. I just straight up, for no other reason than I've used it at least 3 times already, and every time it's saved me a lot of time.
Yeah, well, it's really convenient that even just from the standpoint that you don't have to worry about maybe having one more time that you have to put your CPU on your system, you know, maybe potentially damage the pins or anything like that. Just a really easy, convenient way that, you know, with as basic of a system with no CPU, no memory, no graphics card, you can update the UEFI and get rocking and rolling. Below that, of course, we've got 2 USB 3 ports provided by the chipset. And from there, of course, on top of that, we have the Intel Gigabit Ethernet port, so that high performance, high compatibility controller port. Now, the cool thing that we have in terms of one of our USB 3 ports is going to be our USB charger technology. This is in addition to our AI Plus charger technology. So AI Plus charger was great, allow you to go ahead and have higher performance charging with Apple-based devices. But for you guys that aren't using an Apple-based device, maybe like me, I've got, you know, a Motorola smartphone, a Bionic. Of course, I've got a Transformer Prime in terms of a tablet. You got different products out there. You might want to go ahead and also have better charging performance of those devices. So our USB Charger Plus is very advantageous in this regard. So instead of just being Apple exclusive, we can also use it with non-Apple based devices to allow you to go ahead and have enhanced charging performance, as well as also charge while the system is in different S states. So like S1, S3, S5, or sometimes more commonly referred to as like sleep and hibernation.
Very handy.
Of course, we've got Displayport for guys that are looking for 2560 output resolutions. You've of course got HDMI, and then from there you've got some optical. You've got PS2 combo port for the guys that are diehards out there for, you know, wanting to have the no buffer overflow for gamers.
Of course.
You've got some more USB connectivity, and as we noted before, all the USB 3 ports all support our USB Boost technology, so that gives you a big plus in terms of the best USB 3 performance possible. And then of course you got your digital output connectivity along with your multi-channel output supported by the integrated Realtek solution. So definitely a huge amount of connectivity that you have here on the active backplane.
We're going to go over accessories included in the box here, since some of you might be purchasing this product. I'm going to start out on this side. We have the Maximus V Extreme motherboard, driver, and software disk. Of course, you can head over to the support.asus.com website to download the latest versions of the AI Suite software, as well as all the drivers for this board. But you also do get a ROG case badge in there, as you can see.
One note I do want to make is that we have a really cool piece of software that's not online yet, but it should be coming out very shortly. It's going to be called ROG Exchange. This is going to be a really cool piece of software that will allow the users to dynamically share UEFI profiles, as well as analyze profiles that people will upload directly to the community, and allow them to see a real-time comparative value, so they can see all the voltages, the clock settings, Vrm settings, all that stuff, and like you said, that would be available at support.asus.com.
All right, that seems like the tidbit of information that I left out of the Maximus 4 formula video. Maybe, but that's okay. We've talked about it now. But really cool software, though. I like that, being able to share all of your UEFI settings. Of course, we also have the hard drive and optical drive cable labels, which I find to be very useful as well. The full Maximus V Extreme user guide right there. See, it's very thick. This is all English, too. That's all English right in there. You also get, of course, the OC key with the included USB header cable to connect that to the keyboard. I'm sorry, to the...
And one note, just for users might be wondering about on the OC key, the side of it is a USB port there, which can be utilized for the firmware upgrades, because we do release firmware updates to allow it to have additional level of functionality, as well as to improve maybe compatibility with certain monitors or certain things like that. So always keep it locked to support.asus.com for updates on what we might be bringing in terms of special sauce for the OC key.
See, it's so handy to have JJ here. All these other things I would not have known. There's the OC key. You also have the SATA combo riser card right here that we mentioned earlier. Bear in mind, it does not come with a Rug Core SSD installed. It does come with the combo Wi-Fi card there, dual band if I'm not mistaken.
Dual band and Bluetooth 4.0.
Dual band and Bluetooth 4.0. So there's your combo card. That fits right in with these little accessories. These are some leads that connect to the Wi-Fi card on there. They route over to the input-output shield, and you can secure them to that. And then you can connect these two Wi-Fi antenna, which have individual cables, so you can position those wherever you get the best Wi-Fi signal.
And they are magnetic, so if you want to fix them to maybe like your chassis, the side of the chassis, that you can go ahead and just affix them to there. Makes it really easy for mounting them.
All right, magnetic antenna. Also here you have some voltage read leads. One of these is already plugged into the motherboard up here, but there's one more, as well as a little guide on how to use that with a multimeter. You also get a selection of SLI bridges. So right here we have an extra long SLI bridge. They all have Republic of Gamers logos. They're all black, which matches very nicely. And they're flexible, so depending on which configuration you have with your video cards, you can use that with that. Is this, oh look, they're also including an ROG Crossfire X bridge. Right
Based
there.
on user demand that they wanted a black Crossfire X cable.
ROG Crossfire X cable. Thank you, ASUS, for thinking of the users, and they all match. Because, let's just face it, when you're running multi-card configuration, this is one of the most prominent pieces of hardware in your case, because it usually faces the side, and if you do have a side window, that's what you see. So also here, you have a 3-way SLI bridge and a 4-way SLI bridge. These are the rigid PCB versions that provide a bit of extra support for the SLI fingers on your video cards, and then JJ is going to take it away with the rest of the accessories on the right.
Yeah, one note I actually want to make on the 3-way bridge is I prefer to actually use the 3-way bridge for my 2-way configurations because I usually leave a space in the center. Gives it nice rigidity, and it looks nicer than I feel even the ribbon. But, you know, that's, you can choose any which way you want.
If you're on a roll like JJ, that's how you do it.
We've got the I/O shield, as Paul noted right here, of course, pretty straightforward, but it is, of course, our padded I/O shield, which helps to not only be friendlier on your, of course, fingertips for installation, but it helps to reduce EMI from actually coming in through the back plane of the board, which can cause sometimes interference and instability. So there is actually some additional functionality and the reason why we've padded it. Of course, we've got the Q connectors, which are pretty straightforward, really nice and easy connectors for the front panel USB connectivity as well as the front chassis connectivity. We've got the USB ROG Connect cable, so this would connect to the white USB port on the motherboard, and then would go ahead and connect to, let's say, like your notebook or like a desktop. Within the installation of the ROG Connect software, you'd have that ability to go ahead and monitor, diagnose, troubleshoot, overclock the system. You've got a slew of SATA cables here. We can see that we've got 3 sets in terms of SATA 6G, and then we have one 3G cable set. There's 2 per each, so essentially we give you 8 SATA ports and we give you 8 SATA cables, so you're all set to go there. And then lastly, we give you a bracket, which goes ahead and gives you support for 2 additional USB 2 ports, as well as the eSATA, which connects that bottom-mounted 3G eSATA port, which is on the bottom of the board.
Well guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. I'd like to say a big thank you for sticking with us through the entire thing. I know it's been a while, but we wanted to provide as much information as possible. Whenever JJ's here, we like to try to leech some of his life force to make us more intelligent. While we're here, I wanted to say a couple things. First off, the ASUS ROG Connect button, it's still proprietary at this point. You can try
still in development.
You can try pushing it to call JJ. It may or may not work, but we're not going to list that as an official feature. Also, you might notice in some of our videos, JJ has been responding to you folks who come out there and talk, and there's been some questions as to whether JJ is actually JJ. So JJ, what is your YouTube channel name?
Yeah, from when I'm out there answering your guys' questions or comments on our products when I'm out here, I do it under ASUS Illuminati. So that's definitely me that's responding back to your questions. So I really appreciate any of your guys' open and honest feedback, as well as hopefully you appreciate the time that I'm taking to give you guys a response relative to whatever your questions or comments might be.
And JJ's been great at going into our videos about the ASUS products and giving you guys feedback when you guys have questions. So hopefully he'll be around for this one as well. Although I know there's a lot of stuff coming out, so I'm sure his time will be limited. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. I'm Paul with Newegg TV. This has been JJ from ASUS. For more of our videos, you can head over to youtube.com/Newegg. For more of JJ's videos, you can go to youtube.com/ASUSROG. That's where he posts his stuff, and he's been posting some great videos, so check it out.
Thanks.
He does lots of product comparisons and that sort of thing. Thank you very much for watching this video, everyone. We'll see you next time on Newegg TV.